You don't need to shout to be respected. You don't need to prove your strength, because real strength is silent. And in a world addicted to noise, the man who stays calm becomes the most dangerous person in the room. Pause for a moment. Take a breath. If you've ever been misunderstood, underestimated, or pulled into battles that weren't yours, you're not weak. You just haven't learned the rules of stillness and strategy until now. This video is a roadmap for those who are done reacting and ready to move with precision. We're diving into 9 ruthless but essential rules for developing quiet power, drawn from the core of Stoic philosophy and refined for the modern world. These rules won't teach you how to manipulate others. They'll teach you how to master yourself, how to protect your energy, and how to walk into any room without needing approval from anyone in it. If you've ever wanted to be the kind of man who speaks less but gets heard more, who stays grounded while others spiral, stay with me, because the rules you're about to hear, they don't just change how others see you, they change how you see yourself. Rule number 1. Make your presence a rare event. You ever notice how the loudest guy in the room is almost never the one in control? He's always talking, always posting, always showing up. But the moment he leaves, everything feels the same, like nothing actually changed. That's the curse of being too available. We live in a world addicted to presence. Post more, speak more, show more, be everywhere, all the time, or risk being forgotten. But here's the thing nobody tells you. What's always present becomes invisible. The man who's always in the room becomes part of the furniture, predictable, accessible, common. But the one who's rare, the one who knows how to disappear when he walks in, people lean forward. They notice, because he's not routine. He's an event. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Sometimes, your absence, your silence, your refusal to flood the room with noise is exactly what gives you weight. I learned this the hard way. In my early 20s, I thought I had to say yes to everything, every invite, every meeting, every conversation. I thought presence was proof of value, but all it did was dilute me. I was everywhere, and so I became nothing. I wasn't sharp. I was scattered, until one day, I just stopped showing up. Not in anger, not as a statement, but as an experiment. I pulled back from the noise and suddenly, people noticed the silence. I'd walk into a room after weeks of being gone, and the first thing I'd hear was, "Where have you been?" They said it like I was missed. But what they really meant was, "Your absence made me pay attention." Here's the deeper truth. Scarcity creates value. It always has. Diamonds are just rocks, but they're rare, and that's what makes people kneel for them. You're no different. If you're too easy to reach, people treat you like you're replaceable. So pull back, not out of arrogance, out of discipline. Seneca said, "Withdraw into yourself, as far as you can." He wasn't talking about hiding. He was talking about training people to understand, you're not everywhere. You're not for everyone. And your time is not free. Think about it. The man who speaks in every meeting gets ignored. The man who waits, listens, and then drops a single, clear sentence. That's the one people remember. Why? Because silence builds tension, and tension is power. When you're not constantly available, people lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. They question what you're planning. They respect what you withhold. Now, I'm not telling you to ghost everyone and live like a monk. That's not power. That's hiding. What I'm saying is, be measured. Speak like each word has a cost. Move like each step means something. Let your attention feel earned. Let your presence feel heavy. Because if your presence is too cheap, so is your influence. Here's a Stoic principle I carry everywhere. Don't explain yourself to people who aren't ready to listen. Epictetus. And I'll add, don't offer your presence to people who haven't earned your energy. In a noisy world, quiet becomes a signal. In a crowded room, stillness becomes magnetic. And in a culture obsessed with being seen, the man who can disappear becomes a legend. So disappear strategically, reappear with intention. And when you do show up, make it feel like the air changed. That's not drama, that's discipline. And that's how absence becomes your sharpest edge. Rule number 2, command your emotions or be controlled. You ever been in a moment where your heart is racing? Your jaw tightens, your fists clench. Someone said something reckless, unfair, disrespectful, and every cell in your body screams, say something, defend yourself, don't just sit there. But here's the truth, no one tells you. The moment you react, you lose. Not because you were wrong, but because they controlled your state. They pulled your strings. They set the terms, and you danced to their rhythm without even noticing. Anger is a trap. Emotion is bait. And reaction is surrender. In Stoicism, we say, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. Epictetus. Read that again. If someone can make you snap, it's not just their strategy, it's your lack of training. Here's the image I want you to carry. You're a warrior, not the kind with wild eyes and swinging fists. No, you're a blade kept in its sheath, still, silent, sharp, because a man who must draw his sword at every insult is a man who quickly grows dull, but the one who holds, who watches, waits. That man slices when it counts. I've seen this play out. At a job I once had, there was a guy always ready to explode. Loud, defensive, couldn't take critique. People feared him, but no one respected him. He confused volatility for power. Meanwhile, there was another man, quiet, calm, precise. He never raised his voice, but when he did speak, everyone listened. He never took the bait. He controlled the room by first controlling himself. That's not weakness. That's emotional combat training. Because, let's be honest, most people are walking around like open wires. One comment, and they short circuit. They think they're thinking, but really, they're just reacting. You don't want to be that. You want to be different. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The world will push you, test you, mock you, ignore you, and every time, it will ask the same question, can I make you lose yourself? If the answer is yes, they win. But if you remain centered still, like water beneath a storm, they have nothing to grab. Stillness disarms. I've used this in conflict. I've used it in relationships. I've used it sitting across the table from someone trying to shake me, and it works. Not because I'm emotionless, but because I've trained to pause, not to repress but to observe. There's a difference. Let me make this clear. Stoicism doesn't tell you to kill your emotions. It teaches you to command them, like a general, not a soldier. The soldier charges at the first shout. The general watches from the hill, chooses the time, and wins the war. So next time you're triggered, stop. Don't speak. Don't flinch. Don't take the bait. Ask yourself, is this worthy of my energy, Or is this just a test of my discipline? Because the man who can stay calm when others burn, that man sets the battlefield. He defines the terms. He makes the rules. And the rest, they play by them. Seneca once said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Let that burn in your mind. Because, in a world of emotional chaos, a calm man is not just rare. He's a weapon. That's the art of restraint. It's not softness. It's not weakness. It's sharpened steel under control. And that kind of control, that's the kind of power no one can take from you. Rule 3: walk away without apology. There's a kind of power that doesn't raise its voice, doesn't need to threaten, doesn't try to win the argument. It simply walks away, not out of fear, but out of clarity. You see, people often mistake staying for strength. They think endurance is always noble, that if you care, you'll fight. If you're brave, you'll stay and fix it. But no one teaches you this. Sometimes the strongest move is to let go. I've sat in rooms where I should have left, relationships that drained me, jobs that hollowed me out, conversations that were never about truth, just ego. But I stayed. Why? Because I thought walking away meant quitting. It doesn't. It means you've seen the ceiling and you refuse to keep banging your head against it. There's a Stoic discipline in this. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius. In other words, you don't match the chaos. You don't argue with dysfunction. You don't plead with disrespect. You simply exit and let the silence speak for you. Most people won't get this. They'll call it cold. They'll call it arrogant. But what it really is self-respect in motion. Because if something no longer aligns with your values, your purpose, your direction, then staying is not loyalty. It's self-betrayal. Here's a rule of thumb I live by. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. That applies to conversations, to friendships, to opportunities that come wrapped in compromise. The more you grow, the more you realize not everything deserves a confrontation. Some things deserve your absence. Now listen, walking away doesn't mean you're flawless. It doesn't mean you're always right. It just means you know what you're not willing to carry anymore. And that kind of clarity, it's rare, it's intimidating, and it's powerful. Epictetus said freedom is the only worthy goal in life. But freedom doesn't start on the outside. It starts when you know, I can leave this. I am not stuck. I owe no one my suffering. Think of it like this. A king doesn't beg to stay in a room where he's being mocked. A warrior doesn't argue with a coward. A grounded man doesn't fight to prove his worth. He just stands, breathes, turns, and leaves. And when you leave like that, when you walk away, not out of emotion, but out of principle, you don't lose power. You become the power. Your absence becomes a message. Your silence becomes a mirror. Let them sit with that. In negotiation, the person who can walk away wins. Why? Because he's not desperate. He's not clinging. He doesn't need the deal to feel valuable. He brings the value with him. So here's the challenge. Next time you feel the urge to argue, to explain, to prove, stop. Ask yourself, is this even worth my presence? And if the answer is no, walk. Let the door close. Let the room talk. Let the echo carry your conviction, because you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. Rule number 4, be strategically misunderstood. Not everyone deserves to understand you. Not everyone needs access to your depth. And most importantly, not everything needs to be explained. Let them think you're soft. Let them think you're naive. Let them think they've figured you out. Because the moment they stop watching carefully is the moment you strike clean. We live in a world obsessed with image. Everyone's trying to be seen, heard, validated. They explain themselves to strangers, post their every move, defend every decision. But here's the truth. What's fully known is fully exposed. And what's fully exposed is easy to control. So don't let them know you. Let them guess. I've seen it too many times. A man walks into the room, chest out, eager to prove. He talks loud, brags harder, shows his cards. And you know what people do? They nod, they smile, they scan for weakness, and they find it. Why? Because the loudest man is always the easiest to read. And the easiest to read is the easiest to beat. But then there's the other kind of man, the one who keeps things close, the one who speaks carefully, or not at all, the one who listens more than he talks. You can't read him. You can't size him up. He makes people nervous not because he's intimidating, but because he's unpredictable. That man is dangerous. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." And that hits like a blade, because real growth means letting others misjudge you and not needing to correct them. That's not weakness. That's warfare. Let me tell you what I've learned. If people underestimate you, you don't need to correct them. You don't need to prove your intelligence. You don't need to raise your hand and say, "Actually, I know more than you think." You just sit, wait, watch, because when someone believes you're not a threat, they let their guard down. They talk too much. They expose their strategy. And you collect everything, in silence, like a shadow sharpening a knife. This isn't about being fake. It's not deception. It's discipline. It's the ability to hold back parts of yourself, because not everyone has earned access to the full picture. Seneca wrote, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." Here's my take on that. When you're constantly trying to be understood, you're performing, not living. You're reacting to others' perceptions instead of building your own direction. There's power in being underestimated, because when the moment comes, you don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to convince. You act sharp, decisive, unseen, like a blade they never saw coming. In social dynamics, in business, in war, this principle works. The enemy who looks untrained, but moves like a ghost when it matters, wins. Not because he was the loudest, but because he was the least expected. So here's the mindset shift. Stop over-explaining. Stop correcting everyone's assumptions. Let your stillness confuse them. Let your quiet deflect attention. Let your perceived weakness become your camouflage. Then when the time is right, move with precision. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." So don't argue your value. Don't prove your depth. Be deep. Be solid. Be still. And let misunderstanding become your shield. Let them guess. Let them talk. Let them underestimate. Because they won't see it coming when you finally draw the blade. Rule number 5. Lead without force. Most people think influence comes from control. That to lead, you must push. That to be heard, you must raise your voice. That to gain respect, you must dominate. But the Stoic knows better, because the deepest kind of leadership is silent, subtle, strategic. You don't have to confront to guide. You don't have to overpower to lead. You don't even need to be the loudest in the room. What you need is alignment. Picture this. You're sitting across from someone in conflict. They're tense, defensive, ready to fight. Now, you could push back, escalate, match fire with fire. Or you could mirror. You lower your tone, slow your breathing, soften your gaze just a bit. And what happens? They start to follow, not because you forced them, but because you gave them something calmer to match. That's not manipulation. That's Stoic presence. A man should be upright, not kept upright. Marcus Aurelius. You don't bend people. You invite them to straighten themselves. And often, they do. I've used this everywhere. From intense business talks to personal arguments, from interviews to mentoring young men lost in noise. And the pattern never fails. When you reflect someone's energy, meet it where it is, and then gently shift your own, they follow. Naturally, subconsciously, willingly. This is the power of reflection. You become the mirror, but also the guide. Not because you pulled, but because you aligned, then turned. And like water following the shape of the riverbed, they flow with you. Seneca once said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." I'd take it further. The greatest remedy for resistance is reflection. When people feel seen, they stop fighting. When they feel understood, they stop defending. And in that stillness, in that drop in resistance, you have space to move. Think of it like sparring. A skilled fighter doesn't always strike first. He watches, feels the rhythm, then steps in, not with force, but with timing. Leading through reflection is the same. You read the room. You notice their tempo. You blend with it, not to mimic, but to connect. Then, you slow it down. You tilt the frame, and they don't even realize they've shifted with you. Here's the truth. People trust what feels familiar. They open up to what feels like them. So when you match someone's tone, pace, or posture, you disarm them. You lower the armor they didn't even know they were wearing. And in that moment of surrender, you don't invade, you guide. I've led entire rooms without saying much. Just by being grounded, just by listening, just by being the still point in a conversation full of noise. And over time, people gravitate toward that stillness. They follow not because you pulled, but because you embodied what they were seeking. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That's not just polite advice. That's psychological warfare, done with kindness. Because when you listen, you gain data. When you observe, you gather leverage. When you reflect, you gain trust. And trust, not power, is what leads people. So here's your weapon: presence without pressure, listening without judgment, movement without noise. The next time you want to lead, don't push, don't argue, don't corner. Watch, match, and gently redirect. The strongest leaders don't demand the spotlight. They shape the room just by being the calmest one in it. Lead without force, and you'll be followed without resistance. Rule number 6, have the courage to say, "I don't know." You know what's rare today? A man who can look you in the eye and say 4 words, "I don't know." We're living in a world addicted to certainty. Everyone wants to sound smart. Have an answer. Be the expert in the room. Admit confusion, admit ignorance. That feels like weakness, like loss of status, like you've dropped your sword. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Pretending to know is far weaker than admitting you don't. When you fake certainty, you protect your ego, but you sacrifice your growth. When you say, "I don't know," you open a door. to listen, to ask better questions, to learn for real. I've seen it. I've lived it. I used to hate not having the answer. I'd guess, deflect, say something vague and dress it up in confidence. But deep down, I knew I was bullshitting. And worse, I was building an identity on quicksand. Then one day, someone I respected asked me a question in front of a group, and I froze. I didn't know the answer. Everything in me wanted to fake it. But instead, I looked at him and said, I don't know, but I'd like to learn. You know what happened? He nodded, smiled, and said, that's the smartest thing anyone's said all day. That moment changed everything for me, because that's when I realized not knowing is not weakness. It's readiness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth. This isn't just poetic philosophy, it's practical power. When you stop needing to be right, you stop being a prisoner of your ego. You become dangerous in the best way, because now you're no longer defending old ideas. You're refining them, sharpening, like a blade under fire. Here's the irony. The more you admit you don't know, the more people trust you, not less more, because they see something rare in you: humility, honesty, strength without the costume. There's a psychological concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It shows how people with less knowledge often overestimate themselves, and those with real mastery, they're cautious, curious, always learning. The ones who know the most are usually the first to say, I still have more to understand. That's not modesty. That's precision. Epictetus said, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Think about that. If you always need to look like you're ahead, you'll never actually get there, because you're too busy performing to practice, too busy posturing to improve. I'm not saying walk around unsure of everything. I'm saying be honest when the edge of your knowledge arrives. Then ask the next question. The world doesn't need more fast talkers. It needs real learners. People who ask, who pause, who say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Here's what happens when you do that. People stop posturing. They start listening. You create space for truth, for clarity, for transformation. Because now, you're not just another opinion in the room. You're the one carving a path forward. Don't fear being the one who doesn't know. Fear being the one who's afraid to learn. Say it with strength, I don't know. Then back it with action. Because the man who can say that is the man who ends up knowing the most. Rule number 7. Let silence do your work. In most rooms, the loudest voice thinks it's winning. It fills the silence, explains too much, proves too hard, tries too fast. But the one who says nothing, the one who waits, watches, listens, that's the one holding the blade. Silence is not absence. It's presence without noise. It's the pause before the cut. The space that makes your words sharper when they finally arrive. It's what makes people lean in and wonder what you're thinking. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They rush to fill it with opinions, with justification, with nervous energy. But the moment someone can't read you, they start guessing. And when they start guessing, they start revealing. Here's what I've learned. When you stay silent, you control the frame. Because now they're playing against the unknown. They start projecting. They reveal fears, flaws, cracks in their armor, just to fill the void you've left. And you just watch. You collect. You file it away like a general tracking troop movements on a map. Marcus Aurelius said, the nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Nowhere does this apply more than in moments of pressure, When emotions run high, when the stakes are up, when someone's trying to provoke you, rattle you, pull you into their chaos. Don't bite. Don't speak. Don't defend. Let silence hold the line. I remember a negotiation I was in years ago. The other guy came in hard, aggressive, overconfident. He talked non-stop, filling the air with numbers, projections, and ego. I said almost nothing. I just sat there, letting the silence grow louder than his voice. And guess what? He lowered the price on his own. He talked himself into concessions. He over-explained, oversold, and overexposed. And I didn't have to say a word. That's the power of silence. It makes people work harder. It makes them need your reaction. And when they don't get it, they start unraveling. Seneca once said, speech is the mirror of the mind. If that's true, then silence is the shield. Because what they can't see, they can't prepare for. What they can't hear, they can't twist. And what they can't predict, they can't defeat. There's a reason skilled interrogators go quiet. It's not the question that breaks someone down. It's the stillness after it. The pressure builds. The discomfort rises. And people start spilling truths just to escape the quiet. You don't need to fight to win. Sometimes you just need to wait. Here's the principle. Let your silence be expensive. Don't waste it in small talk. Don't give it away in arguments. Don't fill every gap with noise. When you finally speak, make it count. Make it sharp. Make it impossible to ignore. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The Stoics weren't quiet because they had nothing to say. They were quiet because they knew how powerful it is to be unreadable, to watch the field before stepping into it. Let silence be your sword. Let restraint be your strategy. Let stillness be your signal. And remember, in a world addicted to noise, the quiet one isn't weak. He's just waiting for the right moment to strike. Rule number 8. Train your eyes to see the whole board. Most people live in reaction. They respond too quickly, too emotionally, too close to the fire. Someone says something sharp, they fire back. Someone disagrees, they defend. Someone challenges, they rush to prove. It feels like action, but it's really just movement without direction. There's a difference between the man who reacts and the man who observes before he moves. The first one is in the game. The second one is above it. Here's the rule: don't just play the pieces. See the board. When your perspective is too close, everything feels urgent, personal, emotional. You get trapped in small battles and forget there's a war. I've been there. I've gotten pulled into pointless arguments, tried to win moments that didn't matter, fought for the sake of ego, and every time I walked away feeling small, like I'd spent all this energy proving something but didn't move any closer to the man I wanted to be. That's when I realized a leader doesn't react. He says, Marcus Aurelius said, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Think about that. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to join every fight. You don't have to play every hand that's dealt to you. You can step back, zoom out, and wait. Imagine a general in war. If he's down in the trenches, he sees only chaos. But from the hilltop, he sees the whole formation. He doesn't panic when one flank falters. He adjusts, redirects, executes. That's how you need to live. Not in the trenches of every emotional skirmish, but on the ridge, reading the map. Here's the pattern I've noticed. People who always react fast, they get outmaneuvered. Because they're so busy responding, they forget to assess. But those who pause, those who observe before engaging, They see 10 moves ahead. And in life, like in chess, you don't beat the other player by reacting. You beat them by seeing what they don't. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Why? Because we're too close to the problem, too invested, too reactive. We drown in what's immediate and forget what's important. The Stoic practice is this: create space between stimulus and response. Don't rush to answer the insult. Don't chase every emotional tug. Pause. Step back. Ask, is this a battle or just bait? Here's something I do. When someone says something that triggers me, I don't answer. I breathe. I let the first wave pass, because that first reaction is almost always from ego, not wisdom. By the time I speak, I've already won, because I've chosen the frame, not just the response. The world moves fast, but you don't have to. The more chaotic things become, the more valuable your stillness becomes. People start following the one who doesn't panic, doesn't flinch, doesn't jump into every fire. They follow the one who sees the whole field. Rewire. Don't just play the game, understand it. Don't just respond, redirect. And remember, the man who sees the big picture doesn't waste energy on small things. Rule number 9, disappear strategically. Sometimes the strongest move is not a strike, not a counter, not even a word. It's the quiet step back. In a world obsessed with presence, disappearing feels like surrender, like weakness, like giving up the fight. But let me tell you something I've learned. Not every battle is worth your energy. Not every room deserves your presence. And not every war needs to be fought today. We admire those who grind, push, persist, stay in the heat. But what we often forget is that a blade doesn't stay in the fire forever. It cools, it sharpens, it waits. There's a kind of wisdom that doesn't rush to be seen. It knows that restraint is power, that sometimes the smartest man in the room isn't the one speaking, but the one who's already left. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." I'd take that further. If it no longer serves you, don't stay in it. I've walked away from conversations mid-sentence, not out of disrespect, but out of discipline. I've stepped out of circles where my values were bending, even if it cost me connection, money, or recognition. Because here's the truth. Preserving your inner clarity is worth more than proving your point. There's a science to this too. Neuroscience shows that chronic stress, the kind that comes from staying too long in the wrong fight, actually shrinks your capacity to think clearly. You lose focus. Your memory suffers. Your creativity dies. But when you step back, your brain resets. Your awareness expands. You see, again, Seneca once said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." Let that sink in. Because if you're always showing up, always available, always in the middle of it all, you're not powerful. You're just exposed. There's power in the pause, in the controlled retreat, in the strategic disappearance. Because when you vanish on purpose, you don't just protect your energy, you build mystique. You earn space. You reset the narrative. I call it the ghost move. It's not quitting. It's reloading. You pull back. You cut noise. You conserve energy for the battle that actually matters. And when you return, you're sharper, more grounded, more unshakable than before. Here's something most people never learn. Sometimes your silence leaves a louder mark than your presence ever could. You don't always need to respond. You don't always need to explain. Sometimes you just walk away. Let them wonder. Let them feel the emptiness. And in that silence, they start questioning their own noise. Disappearing isn't weakness, it's calculated absence. It's the art of moving in shadows while everyone else chases light. Know when to step out, not to escape, but to return on your terms. Because the one who can disappear strategically never has to beg to be seen. He becomes the rare one, the one people notice when he chooses to appear. So, what do you walk away with after all this 9 rules? Nina Blades. Each forged not to conquer others but to master yourself. You don't need to be louder to be heard. You don't need to win every argument to have authority. You don't need to prove you're powerful. You just need to stop bleeding energy into things that don't matter. The Stoics didn't teach you how to dominate the world. They taught you how to stand still while the world tries to move you. They taught you that emotional control is not coldness, it's clarity. That silence is not absence, it's intention. That walking away is not surrender, it's elevation. And more than anything, they taught you this. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. You already know what you need to do. Now live it. Speak less. Watch more. Stay grounded. Disappear when needed. Return with precision. Let others play for attention. You move for legacy. Let others react. You respond when ready, and only when it's worth it. Because true power isn't noise, it's presence. It's not about how many people see you, it's about who feels you when you finally decide to speak.